Welcome in, everybody, to the Creed of Crypto podcast, where we provide immersive, essential, and evergreen strategies for the novice cryptocurrency investor. How you doing? I am one half of your hosts, Broke Boy Crypto. I have with me, as always, my co-host, Crypto Ewok. We have a lot to get into tonight. You see the thumbnail. We're going to talk about, is this the worst bear market that crypto and Bitcoin has seen? A lot of different angles to talk about that tonight. A lot of news, as always, in the crypto markets as well. But before we get into any of it, Ewok, how are you tonight? How are you feeling about life? How are you feeling about the markets right now?
Living the dream, man. Markets haven't changed much. Still bouncing around the same levels. Everything's kind of, we're hanging in there. We're getting through it. No real changes.
Yeah, just a lot of sideways action. We saw kind of a little bit of a pump last week. I mean, if you want to, kind of pathetic if you want to call it a pump, but we have seen prices move up a little bit, and there's really just been sideways action over the last week. But yeah, we're obviously still in the mire of this bear market of 2022. And only a few weeks left. We're knocking on the door of that holiday season. I guess we're already technically in it. We had Thanksgiving a couple of weeks ago. We saw new lows, of course, for Bitcoin in November. I think it was right before Thanksgiving, getting down into the low 15s. But as we sit here right now, Bitcoin is trading at 16.8K and ETH is at 12.27. So before we get any further into the show, I am Broke Boy Crypto. You can find me on YouTube and Twitter there. Boy is B-O-I. I have a YouTube channel that focuses on trying to achieve wealth through cryptocurrency and living a minimalist lifestyle to do so. Two of my favorite things. Ewok, tell everybody where they can find you and what you got going on as well.
I'm Crypto Ewok everywhere. Twitter, YouTube. That's very similar. We're here every week with the Creed of Crypto, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard, and just trying to give you guys some information, pass along, and it wanted to let you know that if you do have some questions, save them till the end, and we'll have a little Q&A session. So,
throw them in the chat. As anything comes up, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we will get to them as well. But this is what it's all about, kind of coming together. Couple of guys trying to dissect the market, see where we're at right now. And we do have a lot to get to this evening. So again, stagnant price action at the moment, and mostly those small pumps. At the beginning of every show, we try to talk about where we see the market going here in the short term and where we are on a kind of long-term thesis as well. So I know you agree, Walk, that obviously we're still in this bear trend. We're still trading below some really significant moving averages. We're just not in a good place, obviously, in the crypto markets right now. But the FTX debacle, which I'm really sick of talking about, and I'm sure you are too, and those of you listening probably are sick of hearing about, still feeling the ripple effects of it, kind of seeing where that story goes. But I think that people are starting to feel, just because there's not blood in the streets every single day right now in this market where there was in November, I think that's a lot of people starting to feel that like, oh, the bottom might be in, and maybe that was it. And, there were those periods in November where it seemed like every single day some kind of absolutely terrible news was coming out. So now people are kind of getting that sticker shock of feeling like, okay, maybe we're out of this now. So Ewok, I will defer to you for the moment. Do you think the lows are in? Do you think we're out of it? And what's your view on, we'll say, the next 6 to 8 weeks here heading into January of 2023?
Yeah, I haven't changed my thesis as of yet. We've got more downside to go. I still think there's going to be another major event. The FTX thing could play out even worse. Nothing has really happened with Genesis yet.
Right.
That's still in the works, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, we still have some more downside to go. So buckle up, hang in there. We've got more downside.
Buckle up, Buckaroo. Yeah, I'm with you. I think we will see it as well. Something that we've talked about so many times on here is I'm sick of talking about the Fed, sick of talking about FOMC, but these are just the things that are going on right now. But we've talked so many times about how much of an impact those announcements and the rate hikes and everything are having on the market. And there's a lot of talk about whether things are priced in or not, or how much, the rate hikes will have an effect immediately on the market. But we've talked about before, you need to also let things kind of marinate a bit and see how
Yep.
they really do have an effect on the US economy and therefore the world economy. And I still wonder if, we're far enough out from these rate hikes to really see that yet. I mean, we definitely are some. I mean, people are making major financial decisions here in the United States, based on the current rates that there are. And, slowly but surely we are going to see that. But what do you think, Ewok? I mean, like, do you think that obviously you think there's still going to be more lows? I know you've talked about even another shoe to drop, even though many people felt like FTX was the other boot, I would say.
Well,
But do you still feel like that's out there? And do you think that any of it is tied to some of these, we're going to talk about this later, but like we're kind of in a new landscape macro wise for Bitcoin that it hasn't really seen before.
yeah. Well, the weird thing with FTX is it was a true derivatives platform. They really didn't
Mhm.
hold any kind of coins.
Right.
So it's not like they sold a bunch of stuff that they uh, pulled from the customers because they really didn't have true coins. So it's kind of weird that yeah, it happened, but I don't know that it really affected the markets that much, other
Right.
than people losing wealth. There wasn't a major sell off. There wasn't anything like that. You still have SBF not in jail yet. So,
Yeah.
y- um, I don't think we had a whole lot of fallout from it. Other than like I said, just people losing their wealth that they might have had within that system. Um, so yeah, I still see something else major happening, whether it's major liquidations to cover spot, whatever it may be. I don't think the Fed raising rates or anything like that is going to be too impactful for us.
Hmm.
It's going to have a little bit of play, and like you said, it's usually baked in because it takes some time for things to marinate. Um, it takes time to play out as they increase or decrease these rates, whatever they're going to do. But people have enough foresight to kind of hedge them.
Right.
So it will take a little while for that to play out. But yeah, I mean, we've got again more downside coming. Who knows what it's going to be? It's going to be interesting.
You do make a good point about the FTX thing, like you're saying, really being a lot of derivatives because they obviously didn't really have it. And yeah, I wonder if a lot of the price action in the market was also just people capitulating based on the news. A lot of it was just like panic because, oh my God, like apparently I never knew this. And I don't know what it's based off of, but the second largest exchange went down. I mean, I never used them or anything, but
Mm.
yeah, I mean, just kind of that chain reaction to the news, obviously. And yeah, to your point about SBF, I don't know that we ever do see, prison or anything there. I mean, I guess the jury's out on that, but um,
Well, he
yeah,
got himself a good lawyer now.
yes. But I'm curious to think like what do you think could be? I know this is a hard thing to call, but what do you think could be the other shoe to drop that cause the final capitulation and really get us into that lower teens range for BTC? I mean, I know before you speculated about some kind of development with the Mt. Gox coins, even though nothing has really happened on that front. What do you think the other thing could be? I know everybody's obsessed with this word contagion right now, which is it's funny because we're seeing it like in newer media, like here on YouTube and stuff like that. And that seems like something that you would see more on like CNN and MSNBC and Fox News at night, like, hey, okay, we're going to make sure you work in contagion. That's going to be the word that you know what I mean? Like that wiring from the media. But I do get the sentiment. It's kind of like there is obviously going to be a domino effect. Maybe that'll be my term, domino effect, with some of these different things where, yeah, FTX is insolvent, which leads to this, which leads to that. So, what do you think? Is it another exchange, maybe not going down? You already talked about Gemini or not Gemini, but Genesis.
Genesis.
Um, yeah, I mean, do you think it's that? Do you think it's Mount Gox? I mean, if you had to really get more specific, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just a
If
combo.
if I had to guess, it would be Genesis having to liquidate some of the Grayscale trust in
Mhm.
order to cover balances. That could definitely do it.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna go with that as my thesis, and I think that's possible. We'll
right.
see.
And Grayscale is already such a, I mean, I guess it's a nice way for like boomers to feel like they own Bitcoin, um, and pay a
Yeah.
fee to do it,
Yep.
Yeah, it's just I don't know what could really happen there, but yeah, something happening to Grayscale definitely would not be taking well publicly. I mean, like retail would
Well,
definitely be terrified.
yeah, that and all the headlines are cryptocurrencies on fire,
Right.
pretty much. So I think that would almost add a little fuel to their narrative and make it almost true. There's
Yeah.
really nothing wrong with crypto. We've said it many times. It's the centralized parties that
Right.
decide to get into crypto and make it about a centralized product, instead of letting crypto be what it is and what it's meant for, and that's to remove all the middlemen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, the more of we've been talking about it a lot recently, the more influx of people that we do have coming into this market, the more per capita you're just going to have of people who have no idea that that is the whole purpose of crypto. Or even worse than that, I think people that forget. I really think that people like forget what the whole point of Bitcoin was, and
Right.
some of these other cryptocurrencies that we're into.
For sure.
Yeah. But so next week, even though we are sick of talking about it, is the next FOMC meeting, December the 13th and 14th. That will be Tuesday and Wednesday next week. The Fed will be gathering together to, I imagine, rate hike once again. But most people, if we're talking about what is priced in, I'm fairly certain that people are looking at just 50 points this time around, just based on some of the comments from Jerome Powell. I guess it was about 2 weeks ago or so. I don't even remember, but basically talking about, they don't want to push any further. We speculated a couple of weeks ago that it was maybe an admittal on his point, even though nobody will say it, that we're already in recession territory, however you want to really define it or whatever word you want to put on there. But yeah, I think we're going in for more of a soft landing from this point forward. I don't think we're going to see anything more than a 50-point rate hike. What do you think about the rate hike next week, Ewok, and what do you think the effect will be on the market? Because I agree with you that I think we will see new lows, but in terms of that being a catalyst for the news, if it's 50 points, I can't see anything short term, but maybe a slight pump. I mean, I don't know what else would happen.
Yeah, we could get some bearish or a bullish sentiment from it. I mean, as almost a signal of the beginning of the end of the hikes.
Mhm.
You could be right. We could get a nice little pump, but don't forget, it's probably just a little relief rally, and there is more downside coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like what happened this past week, which who knows why we got the slight pump. I don't know. You can assign it to anything, revisionist history. But yeah, we saw some major pumps. I mean, there were some coins that really, Phantom, obviously, something I talk about on this channel a lot, pumped big time based off some, kind of news from Andre Cronier. But yeah, there's just some coins out there that absolutely pumped this last week. But we are in no place to start getting FOMO and wanting to I mean, you can DCA, but wanting to really ape into the market or anything right now. We're still in dangerous waters at the moment. So,
Yeah,
none of
well, I
this,
mean,
of course. Go ahead.
we're approaching that level, so there's
Yeah.
really nothing wrong with these levels, even though we do predict it to go lower. Obviously, we're not financial advisors, like you said, and we
Right.
don't have crystal balls. So, there's nothing wrong with slowly costing in and
Mhm.
getting get your feet wet a little bit. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, we're definitely that low where like I would not be comfortable not being in the market at all at this point. I
Right.
mean, if there's a percentage chance that the lows are already in, maybe it's only 10 to 15%, but that's enough that I would at least want to have a position, in the market at that point. So I want to get into, so I sent this to you the other day, Ewok, and selfishly, I will admit he does have a lot of followers on Twitter, and I'm a huge fan of Big Cheds on Twitter. He's a degen trader, as some would say. But no, I think he's a very good man. Won a battle with cancer a few years ago. Really good dude. So shout out to him. I'm sure he's watching this, but yeah, so he is a trader of Bitcoin, and I really value a lot of what he says. And He's been talking about for a while, and I know we spoke about this. I don't think it has anything to do with clicks or attention or anything. It's purely he is somebody who is like live or die with technical analysis. There is no I'm going to throw out some bombastic statement to see what people do. I think he likes to test sentiment with certain tweets every now and then.
Sure.
But he wouldn't say something if it wasn't in the TA for him. Now this is still what he's talking about here is still a long ways away to know when we would reach new all-time highs, but he has become a believer just because of how long this market has been trading below different levels of simple moving averages that we even whenever, because we've never been in this state, and the fact that we're trading so far below the previous high in the previous cycle, that we will not see new all-time highs in the next bull cycle for Bitcoin. Basically, the way he was looking at it, and again, this is really far out, so I mean, it's up for debate, really. But it's going to lead to the question that's in our thumbnail about whether this is actually the worst bear market ever and what that could really mean. But yeah, his thesis is basically that we could see something like a 45 to 50K BTC, which, none of us would complain about at this moment, but as like the high in the next bull cycle because of how depressed the chart has been for so long now.
Right.
And then see 100K, new all-time highs in the next bull cycle. So in theory, talking probably, I don't know, 7 to 8 years down the road. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Ewok. And again, I would encourage it. I'm not doing it justice. I would, check out Big Ched's and actually listen to his specific TA reasoning. But I am curious on that because that would be a precedent, Ewok. And what you think of that. And then we'll kind of get into the conversation of like where this bear market kind of stacks up.
Well, it's an interesting theory. I don't know enough about TA to really give any kind of feedback in that sense, but I do know about S curves, and I think the way the S curve is playing out. The last time, what we have from 20K, we went up to 70, so it was about 2.2 or 2.3x, or 3.3. I'm sorry, from the last all-time high. So I think this time we could do maybe a 2x. And then the next cycle kind of even out on that S curve, kind of even out and maybe not hit another all-time high. But my prediction is somewhere between 120 and 140K Bitcoin
For the next bull cycle, you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's what I've thought, because of the way, the increment of X's go down each cycle, the more you get into that S curve, the less the gains are from the all-time high on the next cycle. So
Right.
we still have a ways to go on the upside. However, you're not going to get rich. The people that are getting into Bitcoin now, I really don't think they're going to, unless you're buying a shit ton, you're not going to get that crazy wealth where you can buy something at a very cheap price and have it go up, 2,000, 5,000x and get that multiple on your return.
Right.
We're past that. There's a lot more adoption. As Richard says, the world's richest guy bought in. You've got countries got in. Who's left? There aren't many people left, and the average retail investor isn't going to put enough money in or economic energy in to have that price go that crazy. Retail will make a difference, and the financial space itself, if they can improve or expand upon things like Grayscale, that could impact it on this next one. But just the amount of energy that it's going to take to see another 3 or 5x, I just don't think we have it. So I kind of agree with him, but I think he's one cycle maybe ahead of himself. That's just my opinion.
I definitely see where you're coming from. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, thinking about it in terms of just cycles, you would obviously think that, the further out obviously the lower we're going to be. I think his thesis is just that, like, purely looking at the chart, we have traded below a certain range so much that it's going to make it way harder to get out. It's almost like, everybody's talking about what they think the bottom for Bitcoin will be here in this bear market. And a lot of people like, hey, we might go below 10K, and almost like saying it, like licking their chops wanting to buy, which I understand. But 10K is one of those areas that's like major support, major resistance. So, I mean, you can wish for that, but I mean, if we go below 10K, you may regret it, a few months after that. And I think that's kind of the sentiment that Cheds is talking about. It's like we are trading at such a suppressed price for so long that it's starting to become like, what does this recovery look like? Is it longer? Is it depressed when it gets to its new highs?
So when you say you might regret it, what do you mean? You might regret not buying, or you might regret getting in at that point?
No, I don't. I definitely don't think you would regret buying, but you might regret it in terms of like maybe you won't regret it long term, but like in the short term, it's like we may be below there then for a while, and this whole thing goes on for a whole lot longer and is a whole lot more depressing than we previously thought it would be. That's what I meant.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a normal bottom cycle. I think, again, just like it did in 2018, it's going to chop sideways. Once we hit that bottom level, it doesn't just go back up. It takes a year, usually, and the Bitcoin halvening will happen. Mm-hmm. And then after that is when you start to see the cyclical upside again. I mean, that's the previous cycles. Usually, they have some sort of rhyme. They may not mirror each other, but they are very similar. So I still think it's going to chop around. Once we do hit that bottom level, it's going to chop around for a good 8 months at least.
That's when people are going to get really chopped up as well. I mean, like we've talked about this before. This market is so volatile compared to other markets that if it's not going up or down, people usually get shaken out the most and the most stressed out and do the wrong things when it is going sideways. Because when it goes down, anybody who's like a long-term investor that is interested is like licking their chops, getting ready to deploy any capital they have on the side. When it's going up, I don't really need to explain what's good about that. But when it's chopping, you're just like, man, it's almost like a gambler in some way. It's like you have the itch to do something in the market. And at those points, anytime, this is a practice I use anyway, anytime you don't know what to do, just remember that nothing is a choice,
It's an option.
Yeah.
It's probably your best option.
Probably, yeah. If you don't know what to do and there's not something screaming at you in the face, like, for example, I'll just say my little personal story, like as far as investing in crypto this year so far. So back in June is when we had the original lows of, man, it seems so far away now, but 17.6K for BTC. We saw sub $900 ETH, have not approached that again since then. As far as ETH goes, but a lot of the alts bled to lows they haven't seen since. I'm thinking of like Polygon Matic was in the 30-some cent range, hasn't even sniffed that since then. And even though we've had new lows, so there's been a lot of that. And I remember I bet other people out there listening to this right now probably had the same thoughts that I did. I was kicking myself all summer long after that, like July, August, September. I think I started to get in, scaling a bit in September, but all summer long, I was like, damn it. Like, I don't think I missed it, but I still had that FOMO, and I was just waiting all summer long. So when this stuff happened in November, not just because it was my second stab at it, but because, I mean, you start to get more educated, and I'm sure you can speak to this, Ewok, being through multiple cycles at this point. You start to get more educated on, like, I need to be buying right here. And like when all the FTX stuff was going on and it was just blood and drama every single day, I was like, I have to be buying right here. I mean, it's also good to like wait for that whole, let's get stagnant at that, what feels like the bottom for a year. And that's good too. And it's not like you have to rush into it necessarily, but it just felt so bad and so dire in November that I was like, I have to deploy a decent amount of what I've got on the sidelines right now.
Right.
So,
and I believe my advice to you was we're not done yet. So don't do it all.
And I didn't, and I didn't plan on doing that, but yeah, I do think it'd be foolish not to when something like that I think is going on. But it's up, you're the individual. You have to decide what that is, obviously, for yourself. But I think the longer you're in this market, the more obvious it starts to seem like, yeah, it may not get worse than this. You know what I mean? Like you can start to feel what's really bad. And that's a good segue to the point of this kind of argument we're talking about with what Ched's started here about his thesis about the next bull cycle and the thumbnail of this show tonight. And that is this the worst bear market that we have seen in BTC and crypto's history? I'm going to naturally default to you on this, Ewok, because you've, seen many cycles before and know what it feels like. But there's multiple ways of looking at this. So, I guess you could look at it in terms of price and how far we're suppressed at this point as far as the bear market, but also the events of it and where we are in the world, of crypto. So I agree with you, Almighty Hexakim. We need some more subs. So
we do need some more subs.
Go find them for us.
Say hello, everybody.
Yeah. So what do you think, Ewok? Yeah, you recall obviously 2017, 2018 really well. What do you think about summation? I'll let you take this whatever direction you want to go. Where we are now versus where we've been in the past. Is this the worst? And I will say one more thing. I put out a poll on YouTube a little bit earlier about whether people thought this is the worst bear market in crypto's history. Now, I will predecess this with it's only like 50 to 75 votes, I think, at this point. And also, most of the people voting on it, you have to imagine, haven't even seen a bear cycle prior to this. That's just statistically true. But we are sitting at about a 60-40. Yes, this is the worst bear market in the history of BTC right now. So I will let you give your thoughts.
Well, I don't think it's the worst. We haven't seen that yet to determine whether it's the worst or not. Like I said, I think, and you and I both agree that we have some more downside to go. The one thing that is different, and we've talked about this a couple times too, is that the global markets are also down. We're facing a recession. That has really never happened with a crypto bear market yet. I think the last one was 2008. And Bitcoin was not around until 2010, 2011 or something like that. So again, this could be different in that sense. It could be the worst bear market that we've ever seen, but we don't know yet. It could flow just like all the other ones. It's on pace to do that. Once it hits a bottom, or if it goes below 85% for Bitcoin, that could signal a much different outcome. The time frame could also signal something different. We're still on pace though with what I had said before, and I think that average out of the last 3 cycles came out to be somewhere in January. So we've not gotten there yet. We can't really determine that it is the worst we've ever seen or will ever see. It does feel a little different, but every cycle is going to feel differently, because I remember the last cycle when a lot of the shakeout played out. Always have to get rid of the corrupt people in the space, right? That is kind of the goal of the bear market, is to shake a bunch of people out, get the false players out, and kind of bottom out, reset, and start over. Each market's going to be different how they name it. The last time it was the lending platforms. This time it's the exchanges that are leverage trading, or creating false tokens and over collateralizing things like that. So the next cycle is going to be very similar. It's going to have a different name. They're going to slap a different name on it, probably regenerate some of these same contracts that got wrecked again this time with a different name, different founder, all that. It's going to happen again, just in a different way. So I can't say that we've gotten to that point yet to determine whether this is the worst one. It does feel a little bit different, but time will tell for sure.
Yeah, we don't. Not enough data is really the correct answer. But let me ask you that, because you talk about it feeling different. It's got to feel different for you, I imagine. Because the last time around, I mean, it felt like you're in the desert looking at a tumbleweed go by with crypto at some points. Now there's all these major players. I mean, like Tom Brady was not in crypto commercials in 2017. So At least not that I'm aware. But yeah. So what do you think? A lot of it's that, like, even though you know, you may, some listeners right now may laugh at me for saying this, but it is, I think, objectively true. We are undoubtedly in a better place in crypto now than 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, as weird as that even feels to say right now, I mean, it's progressing. We're not at a good point right now, obviously. But do you think, because there's all these major players in the game, does it maybe feel way worse just because, you know, the whole game gets bigger, so the criminals get bigger, and the criminals do even worse things, you know, so it even
Well, yeah,
feel, oh, you know, just we're, you know, crypto's, it's all going to zero, you know.
for sure. I mean, the biggest thing for me that I can speak for myself is the last bear market. I was broke.
Yeah.
You know, I lost a lot of money.
Hmm.
Uh, this bear market, I'm still up about 1,000x. So,
Right.
you know, I, for me, that's what's different. I found the right person to follow and to get the right products to get into.
The cult
Um,
leader.
yep, the cult. You know, part of the cult.
Yeah.
Having our next séance here after we end our stream. So,
There you go.
you know, looking for some
Sacrifice some.
live sacrifices and some virgins. So,
Nice.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Cool.
But for me, that's the big difference. You know, it's you know, it has evolved a little bit, and there's been a lot of education for people that have happened. You know, that have gotten into the right things. Not your keys, not your coins. A lot of people learned that lesson and followed the advice of you know, a lot of the intelligent people.
Hmm.
So they're not getting as wrecked, and hopefully, you know, some people, you know, obviously everybody's portfolio is down at this point, some considerable, but you know, everybody has a lot more promise, I think, or not promise, but more hopefulness, I guess, for the next cycle. Where the
Hmm.
last one kind of wrecked a lot of people, and they're like, "Oh my God, what's next?" You know,
Right.
that mentality. So it's a little bit different, at least that I can see. Now, again, I'm in a different community, and there's more positivity. So for the future anyway, there are, I'm sure there's some other ones that are wrecked and things that may never come back, and there's always going to be that with a bear cycle. So
Yeah.
we'll see, but that's the big difference for me.
And it does make sense to your point that as cycles go forward and as people see these continuing, you know, crazy crypto cycles, that you do get more familiar with it and you are able to handle it more. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it would make more sense now that there are less people, I guess, like per capita getting wrecked. But yeah, I think we have to admit it. Again, it sounds silly to say because it's been so terrible for so long this year, but crypto is definitely in a better place than it was 5 years ago. I mean, like, you really have to zoom out, I think, not only at the chart, but just kind of at what is going on, you know, to realize that. But yeah, it probably just feels a lot more severe because of some of the major players that there are in the game now and more
Yeah,
money. So,
yeah. Well, there's a lot more money. There's a lot more corruption. Just
mhm,
everything with about everything with Marty just said it. You know, ripple effect corruption. You know, we're
mhm.
seeing a lot of that with these big players coming out, and you know, as we've said before, as the tide goes out, you see who's swimming without their bathing suits. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And definitely. Oh, I think I lost my camera there for a second. Try to get it back. Yeah, definitely, of course, with crypto. So let's move on to the next thing here. So I'm going to throw it to Ewok while I get my stupid camera to work again. But there we go. There we go. So we were talking a couple of weeks ago about this MetaMask thing. So you know, we're not going to rehash the entire thing, but essentially that it's Infura, right? Is
mhm.
the I'm gonna let you explain it so I don't make any errors here.
Well, so I'm not sure what you're asking. Are we talking about the
Well,
node and
what
the security and
yeah,
privacy?
yeah. So what was the issue that actually came up with MetaMask and the software it's actually run by, and why people are legitimately a little bit concerned about MetaMask privacy at this point?
So with and a couple of these things have just changed within the last week that I read. MetaMask had come out with a new I don't know whether it's a TOS, the terms of service, or what it was, but they recently this week had said that we only hold your data for 7 days. Um, but basically, what it does is it tracks your IP address along with the transactions that you've made. They claim they only hold it for 7 days, but really what it is also Infura, which is the main node to Ethereum that is also collecting data. So, there are several ways to get around this, and one of them is to create or connect to a different node. We listed that last week on last week's stream. There's several different nodes that are out there, some more secure than others. Some are still unknown what their terms of service are if they do collect the IP addresses. But I think the best way and the best way to get around that, or if you're concerned about it anyway, is to use a VPN. So that should mask it for you, and it doesn't matter what you connect with or whose service that you're using. You should be good. You can show yourself in a completely different country if you want to. So
right.
yeah, I don't pay it a whole lot of attention. Unless you're one of those very tinfoil hat type people that think everybody's watching every move that you make, which they very well could be. But if you're not doing anything wrong, you really have got nothing to hide. So
right. Just think of Alex Jones and a smile comes across my face just because of how funny that guy can be. But so I wanted to you had a an alternative that I know our friend Randy Halarski from the Hex community has been talking about. Now, I don't know a lot about this wallet, but I have seen it, I think in places other than just him talking about it. But as an alternative, hypothetically to MetaMask, and there's many decent hot wallets out there. MetaMask is the number one that you're going to hear about because it is ERC compatible, and a lot of people use Ethereum on there, and many people like and use MetaMask, but is it Aurochs, or how do you actually pronounce
it is pronounced Aurochs.
Okay.
And I'm going to post a link here for the folks in the chat if they want to use it to check it out.
There you go.
The Aurochs team is or you've got one too. Yep.
Yeah.
So the Aurochs team and Randy Halarski, like I said, he's the first one that has been talking about it. He uses the Aurochs indicator. So they've been in the general crypto space with their trading, their TA. They have some specialized indicators on their charts as well. And I think they're going to integrate that into the wallet as well. But he's worked with them for several years, doing a lot of their social media stuff. And he speaks very highly of those guys. So, it's pretty cool. I think it's another alternative to MetaMask. We're obviously waiting for Richard Hart to release his wallet because he said the devs are working on that as well. And, that's exciting too. Maybe that'll have a duct taped token with it as well. Hopefully we get Pulse Chain and Pulse X before there's another sacrifice phase for anything like that. But, I know Richard cares about the privacy. He cares about decentralization, privacy. So it'll have all those tools in it without the collection of data and the things that we're concerned about. So, yeah.
No, I want to ask you too. Brissology just brought this up in the chat, and I've heard of this as well. But so the internet money ecosystem, have you checked out this wallet at all? Because
I haven't yet
heard about it, but I don't know a lot about it.
I have heard about it as well, and I've been meaning to check it out. Every time there's another streamer or something, I get sidetracked and forget about it. So I will make myself a note and check this out. Thanks, Brissology.
Yeah, I'm going to check into that too. I'm checking out the site right now. Yeah, I mean, inevitably alternatives are going to pop up that are superior over time. I mean, that's just the way the whole thing works. Obviously, you and I both, I recommend anyway, personally, having a cold storage wallet, of course, at all costs, number one. Trezor, Ledger, whatever it is you want to deal with. But obviously, there's going to be a need for a hot wallet to actually connect and do things as well. So, yeah, good alternative with Aurochs to check out as well. So,
with those wallets, you can always use your Trezor suite to connect with that wallet as well. That way,
Right.
your funds are really not ever touching your anything. You're using the suite to do all the work, so it's a lot safer.
Yes. Yeah, you can just link it up through the MetaMask and use it that
Yep.
way. So another good
Yep.
thing to do. So I want to get into a little bit of Richard Hart Hex stuff. We have some interesting developments the last couple of days. Trying to think of what I want to get into first. Let's get into what actually kind of happened last week because I was intrigued to ask you about this Ewok. So um, we talk a lot on here about the Richard Hart Twitter spaces, and I don't mean the ones that he hosts because he hasn't done a ton of them, although he did one over the weekend that I really enjoyed. I know you listened
You
to that
did.
too.
Yep.
And it was on the eve, or I should say after the day in which he was on another one of these large ones that I think was run by Mario Nawfal or Narwhal or whatever we're deciding to call him, with Kim.com in there and all the usual suspects. And now I wasn't really listening to this one, and I think it may have been about the Twitter files. I'm not sure. We'll get to the Bristology comment on the Internet Money Wallet here again in a minute, but I think it had to do with that. I forget why he was on stage, but anyway, allegedly Richard was about to be able to speak. Had a question for Elon Musk, if you haven't heard of him, and he was in the room as well. And I guess Kim.com muted him after that. I saw Kim.com did actually tweet about this later and just said that, I don't know, he had some
Well,
specific questions he wanted to ask Elon and felt like Richards was going to devolve into talking about Hex or something. I don't know what he
right.
said, but
So
what do you make of
yes, they were all in the space. Richard was speaking, and they kept tweeting at Elon to come in, and he finally did.
it? Mhm.
And at that point, I think Kim.com had some questions that he wanted to ask.
Yeah.
So rather than try to compete with big personalities like Richard, and I believe Jack was there as well.
Oh,
From
Dorsey?
No, from Zen, Jack Levin.
Oh, Levin. Okay. I gotcha.
There were a couple guys in there all at the same time, and Kim.com removed them basically as speakers.
Yeah.
And then Richard called him out later and said, "Hey, it's funny that you talk about free speech and then remove my right to speak." Kind of
Yeah.
one of those things. Kim.com replied with, "Elon says you have bad taste or bad fashion sense, and
Ah,
he
yeah. Yeah.
wouldn't want to be caught in a room with you, or even in a chat room, or whatever it was." However he
Yeah.
said it, it was kind of juvenile, whatever. And I think Richard had even said in one of his I forget whether it was spaces or online, but basically he said what he wanted to say was, rather than open up everything and give people the choice, that you need to actually promote the things that work. And that
Mhm.
was essentially his advice, or would have been his advice to Elon. And
Mhm.
he said that's all he really wanted to say. Is that true? Who knows? Richard can get on a rant and go for a while. And especially if Elon would have acknowledged and started that conversation, who knows where it could have gone? It could have been really cool. So, anyway, it's just, that's how it played out. Unfortunately, he didn't have the choice to, or the chance to interact with them and speak with them. But there's always next time. Who knows?
Well, the bigger point that this leads me to, because Richard then talked about this on the space he did on his own real late that night. Um,
Oh,
what
and
did
Briz
Bristology say?
actually says he admitted later that Elon didn't say those things about Richard. So Kim
Even if he did, I took
basically,
that as a joke anyway. I
I,
mean, even if
I
he
thought
did,
so too.
yeah, yeah,
And I didn't care if he did either way. Elon can be a jokester himself, even if he had maybe said something. But it looks like
right.
Kim.com admitted that he didn't say those things.
Yeah,
So
I took that as Kim.com just making stuff up,
yeah,
honestly. But yeah, so the bigger thing I want to talk about here is Richard then on his own spaces was talking to a bunch of Hex folks and essentially said that he felt that the Twitter spaces were pretty much a waste of time and that to get that message out takes up too much of his time because, you sit there for a couple of hours. And this part I do agree with him on. It's some of these things are like a 6-hour space. And then
sure,
Richard pops in and he's there for 2 hours and he throws some gems out there and it's awesome and some cool mic drop moments and all this stuff. But
yeah,
then you got to rely on like K4K or somebody like screenshots the time Richard was on it and then uploads it to their YouTube channel. And It's dumb. It's just, why is that the only
You
way we
think?
can do this? Well,
I
no. All I'm saying is, like, why isn't there an easier way, you know, to access his segment on the Twitter space? It's not like, as what I just described is fine, but there should be an
right.
easier way to do that. I think that's
Yeah,
really what he was saying. And most of the people, and I do agree with what I think you're going with this. Most of the people rebutted Richard and said,
they
like,
did.
please don't stop.
Please
Like,
don't stop. Yeah,
yeah, that's what she said. But yeah,
yeah.
please don't stop. We want you to keep doing these. And I agree. I've said many times on here, like, Twitter Spaces Richard is by far the best Richard. And I think it's because he's talking to all these other big personalities, and you can
Yeah,
just see how smart he is in the world of DeFi and crypto.
absolutely.
But what do you think? Because I also, how good of a businessman he is too. And if he feels that that's not the best return on his investment, it probably actually isn't, even though we selfishly enjoy hearing it.
Well, I don't know. I've seen the statistics of how his follower account has grown in the past month alone, and I think a lot of that comes from Spaces, especially on the Twitter side of things. Now, if he wants to entertain that whole group of the Louis Vuitton, the Gucci, the Prada, that
Yeah.
if he wants those people, then his Instagram is where that's growing. So, yes, he is getting followers on that side, but really, what do they know about crypto? And what are they going to learn once they, maybe if they do dig a little bit deeper? But
Hmm.
people like that, are they going to? I don't know. I think your better value proposition is in the crypto Twitter, where you've got people that already know what MetaMask is, they already know what Uniswap is, and I think it's a lot more successful to grab that people, to have them hear how smart you are.
Right.
That, I mean, that's one of the most compelling things about his Twitter Spaces, is just listening to him and hearing how intelligent he is. And when people put up an argument and he immediately shoots it down and then tells them why, it's not just an argument. It's here's what I believe and here's why you're wrong. Um,
Hmm.
I think he has gained a lot of respect. And I think it's made a big difference.
Yeah, I agree with you. I personally love them, and I think they're great segments. I guess, like, if the guy himself says that it's not the best return on investment for him, as far as getting the word out about how crypto and DeFi should actually work, getting the word out about Hex, as being one of the most superior products in that atmosphere, I can only take him at his word as far as that
Right.
goes. But
So the one thing is too, though, when he's going into those spaces, into Mario's spaces or whoever it might be, he tries to refrain from just talking about Hex.
yeah.
So that is possibly why he thinks it's not as good. But again, I think there's a lot of alpha flow, and I think it gets people to check into who he is, what he's all about, and when they find out, who he is, they see what he's doing. So
Hmm.
maybe in a very indirect way, because they do ride him a little bit about all you talk about is Hex, but he really doesn't. And I don't think he does bring it up, and he tells why it's a better product, it's a better store of value than Brazology's Bitcoin. But I think there's definitely a benefit there to it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, and I think he takes the right approach with that, and I agree with you. I haven't heard him just hawk Hex the whole time when he's in those things. It seems to me that, like you said, well, if anybody who's ever done a Twitter space and did step up, if you step up and sound competent and educated, whatever, you're going to get followers after. Like, as soon as you leave, you'll pick up even a handful of followers. That's just the way it goes. And I do think that would be the right way for Richard to do this. Yeah, don't just go in and hawk Hex, which he doesn't do. He kind of poses the problem with crypto at the moment, poses the problem with middlemen, all this stuff, and then proposes what the solution is, and just kind of gets short of talking about Hex. And sometimes he'll follow up a statement with talking about it. But yeah, certainly people are going to check into him after that. So I'm with you. I don't want him to stop doing it. I love seeing him in those. Um, I like them in general. But yeah, I think we need somebody like him in there. We just have to see if he continues to do it. So,
Yeah.
um, but I
Well,
want to
let's
follow up on
talk
this.
about
Okay.
let's
Yeah.
talk about the scam or the cult movie here. Now that we're talking about the hex stuff too.
Let's do it. Yeah, we're not going to do a full breakdown because I
No,
saw
I don't
Jim
wanna.
Rat Crypto and Stolt just literally like watched the whole thing earlier, I think, and reacted a long way with it. But yeah, I keep forgetting the name of the channel. It's not like above average.
No, I don't want to give them any.
I won't even say it.
I don't want to advertise for them because
I think what I said is like a synonym for what they're titled. But anyway,
yeah,
so there's a
either way.
26-minute. I'm not going to call it a documentary, but a 26-minute piece on.
It's a hit piece.
Yeah, I guess so, and I do have conflicting thoughts here. So and I think it's good to hear a conversation from you and I, because you being like a day one OG Hexagon versus me who isn't, and kind of sees it from afar a little bit, while still obviously supporting it and investing in it. But so yeah, it's more centered around the cult of Hex, or Hex being a cult, which to me, I don't really care about as much as whether or not the, smart contract works and what the product actually is. So that's why to me, a lot of it was fluff and I didn't really care about it.
Right.
But you watched it the day it came out, I think yesterday. So give me your view. And if we're not going to advertise who actually made it or anything, I guess kind of for anybody listening who hasn't seen it, maybe discuss what it is a little bit. But it's called, I think, the Cult of Hex. But yeah, give me your initial thoughts on it, what they got right, what they got wrong. I imagine you're not going to think too much was right.
Well,
yeah,
they did get some stuff right. My feeling about it is they've exhausted the scam narrative for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we've had over 3 years now of 100% flawless uptime, I think they're changing their narrative and being like, oh shit, now we can't really call it a scam because nobody's lost their money. You got new people coming in all the time. Let's call it a cult. So it was more based on that, about how Richard is the leader, and yeah, it was a smear piece, basically, is what I thought it was, about how they really dove into the Crypto Sparbook guys, and because they went on the tour last year, the 555 tour,
Oh yeah,
around the country to introduce Hex to people. Well, they said, they were going around and they took one scene of one of the giveaways, and it was a little kid.
I saw that.
They made it look terrible. They made it look
Yeah.
like we're wrangling children into this, and it's not.
And in a vacuum, that comment was dumb. I mean, like the comment to the little girl was like, "You're not ever going to have to work again, or you're not going to have to work the rest of your life now because you have a hex stake or whatever." I mean, yeah, I mean that looks stupid because that.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't tell somebody not to work because they, you know what I mean,
right?
Obviously, but
and obviously that was in jest.
Yeah,
right. They blew a lot of things out of proportion. They did bring up some valid points. We do objectify Richard a lot. We believe in what he says, but when the guy's right all the time, it's hard not to. Until he becomes wrong on a lot of the things he says, it's hard not to look up to that and to repeat what he says. I don't think we treat it like a religion. Maybe some people do, but there's nothing wrong with a group of like-minded people that are spreading the good word. That's essentially all it is. We want other people to experience what we have, and it's pretty sound. It's a pretty sound, smart contract that has no middleman. There's a lot of things that are very, very good about it, and that's why we share it like we do, and we're pretty passionate about it. So I don't know.
Well,
I thought the take on it, they kind of went off on the tangent of Richard, being a spam king or whatever it was. They went into that. They went into him having fake passports. They went into, there was a lot of other.
We all know already.
Yeah, we already know. It's 3 years old. This stuff has already come out. We know his name is Richard Schuler. All that stuff. It's just, I don't know. That's why I don't even want to advertise it. But if you want to look it up and find it on your own, have at it. But just take it with a grain of salt.
It's likely a good piece of content for that channel, which I'm not going to blame anybody really for doing, I guess.
Uh,
But to
sure.
me, the reason it's not important is because it focused more on whether or not Hex has a cult-like flavor to it with the people involved in it, and comparing Richard Hart to, not that they said this, to like a David Koresh, Jim Jonesian type figure, I guess, drinking the Kool-Aid. But I don't care about that. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's about what is the product and what is the smart contract. And there's literally a section in that piece that says, like, I'm not going to get into the finer aspects of the smart contract. Well, why? What can you please? Obviously, to entertain your audience, you're not going to sit there and dissect a DeFi protocol smart contract. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to be part of what you're going to air in that little documentary, whatever you want to call it. They're going to focus more on how some of this looks cultish to them. And here's what I'll say, you being a day one Hexagon. Now, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I love the things that Richard says. I think he's one of the most educated people in crypto and DeFi. And yeah, I love listening to him, especially when, and I'm not necessarily criticizing him for this, but whenever he's not necessarily arguing against somebody else and just breaking something down on his own, so he doesn't even have the chance to be confrontational or anything, and he can just straight spit facts. That's like my favorite version of him.
Oh, yeah.
But I agree with you, because he has proven all that and has seemingly superior knowledge than 99.9% of people that talk about crypto that we ever hear. That's why people, seem to worship the ground the guy walks on. I mean, this is still a small market that not a lot of the world is invested in. And he's one of the very few people that actually do understand it,
Yeah.
and you don't see that very often. Now, as far as I know, he's not trying to have sex with our wives or, tell us to, I'm trying to think of some of the other things those guys do, but yeah, I get why an onlooker would think it looks cultish and stuff like that. I, as somebody who is not invested in Hex from day one, don't share that, like, I guess, blind allegiance. But to me, that's even more telling of the legitimacy of he and this product in Hex, that I don't share that. And I independently and objectively have come to it to really value the things that he says, value Hex, value the other products that he's working on. Now, I'm not somebody who's like all in necessarily on Hex. It's part of what I invest in, which to me, I mean, if you want to call me part of a cult by that, go ahead. It's, one thing that I invest in. So I really don't care.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
that's that's about all the time I'd like to give that one anyway. I mean,
yeah. Well, to me, it's not legitimate because, like, it doesn't talk about anything I care about. Like, if you want to dissect a smart contract and talk about why the product's garbage, I'm all ears. You know what I mean?
Well,
if there's like,
and that was one of the things that the guy said. He didn't even want to get into the specifics of the contract. He didn't want to talk about that.
So who cares? It's
let's bash these people instead of finding out what they're really doing, and how it really works. Maybe if they had done that and spent some time on it, we might have a new cult member.
Exactly. Yeah. I kind of wanted to go. Well, first off, before we do this, I wanted to go back up and just hit up that Versology comment about the wall in a minute. But what else do you feel about? I know we don't have a lot of pulse. There you go. Yeah, Jay. Me too. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like a good wife swap. You heard it here first. Maybe that's the next Dex. Maybe Uniswap,
there you
wife
go.
swap,
Wife
pancake
swap.
But
that would be an interesting Dex, huh?
That would be. I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to see that. But tell me a little bit, Ewok, about well, I shouldn't say we don't have any pulse chain updates, because there's some validity to V3 now coming maybe soon. What's your impression of all of this and where we might be with pulse activity?
The last update that I heard is that the devs gave Richard a time frame. He's not sure whether he believes them or not, because they haven't been right in the past. There were some developers that were talking to pulse chain developers. I'm sorry, product developers that are developing for pulse chain, talking to the pulse chain developers, and they anticipated it within a few weeks. That was the unofficial last word that I had heard for the V3. So, take that with take it with a grain of salt. We'll see how close, but we could potentially see V3 maybe by the end of the year. It'd be a nice New Year's gift, but who knows? If they find more bugs. Now, I know there were some bugs that were found even with the Ethereum fork, and they did disclose them with the Ethereum developers. They were both working on it. I don't know if it had been patched yet or not. So we'll see who kind of fixes it first. It'd be pretty cool to see, you know, our group fix it first and then implement a patch to the Ethereum guys. But we'll see how that works out.
Well, it's kind of cool enough that they even caught it to begin with. I mean, that's kind of
it says a lot. I mean, I think you know, because I hear enough people like Eric Wall saying that none of the developers are any good. You know, that's why Richard won't tell you their names, because they're nobodies and whatever. You know, I know they disclosed some other bugs to the Binance Smart Chain folks as well that they had patched. So apparently they're catching bugs that the other people aren't, or they would have fixed them themselves, and you know, they wouldn't have even found them. So it's a good sign. You know, they're getting there. I think we're getting close.
Yeah, it's
4 more weeks.
4 more weeks. I do think things are feeling somewhat positive. You know, and man, we've talked about it so many times how much of a welcome thing right now Pulse Chain launching would be. You know, just here at this moment. What's Jay saying there?
He says you guys get in on DQST coin, Drag Queen Story Time coin.
Hey, you know, it's becoming more prominent, these drag shows. So yeah, we may. I don't know if there is. I don't know if there's an airdrop associated with that.
Get that on Wife Swap.
You get that on Wife Swap, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like if Pulse could actually come out, you know, in the not too distant future, would just be so beautiful, you know, with where we are in this market right now.
Yep, I agree.
But you know, to kind of sum up this podcast tonight, you know, it does seem like we are obviously near the bottom, and man, I just am really would like some good news and greener pastures ahead here sometime soon. And we will get there. You know, it's been a long, tough year. Luckily, we've already had the descent for the most part, which was the entirety of 2022. It will be interesting to turn a new leaf to a new year and see what 2023 holds. Probably not a lot of exciting things, but more than we had this year. Wasn't a lot to be excited about in the world of crypto this year. So, Ewok, just to sum it up, is there any other thoughts you have to leave us with, and anything you want to say about the coming weeks here in the crypto markets?
No, I think we're, like I said, you kind of touched on it a little bit. We're getting close. I feel like we're almost there. There's a lot of things happening. You know, you've got the Bit Boys of the world chasing down the SBFs in the Bahamas. You know, that's getting interesting. Find things to watch. Find things that entertain you. Try to pass some time, get outside, spend some time with family, because you know, once this bear market's over and you start getting more and more involved and more excited, you know, those things kind of go by the wayside, and you spend a lot more time on crypto than you probably should. So enjoy this time off while you can, and do some productive things with it. Build up some of your dry powder so that when we do hit that threshold of the bottom, or what we think might be the bottom, you know, you've got some nice ammunition to put it into play. So
yeah, definitely get some dry powder ready. And yeah, the BitBoy thing, not to go off on a tangent on that, but man, he is just, you know, I get it. It's probably good content for him and stuff like that. It still seems like it seems like people are starting to remember kind of his past a little bit now, you know?
Well, with him well, he came out the other day and said, you know, there was a lot of coins that I regret pumping, you know. Now, he didn't come out and say, well, I was paid to talk about them. That's one of the things he didn't say. But he said, you know, this last bear market, or this last bull market, was not as profitable for the more general scope of crypto like the other ones were. And to his point, he's right. You know, there were only a select handful of things that really did do well this bull market. So But again, he neglected to say that, well, they paid me to talk about it, and I probably dumped it on your head.
Right.
So anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off there with what you were saying, but
I don't think he'll ever say that. But yeah, it's just been interesting that I don't know. I don't know if he's going through like a manic thing. He's just tweeting so much and has so much constantly going on. I mean, I guess if it's good for engagement, okay. But sure. I'm honestly sick of the whole thing. I don't care about SBF or the hunt or anything like that. I just want to get on to greener pastures. So we will be back next Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It should be another barn burner of an episode. We'll have FOMC happening that Wednesday, where we perceive right now, we think there's going to be a 50-point rate hike from the Fed. We will see how it goes, but we'll probably have a little bit more of volatility in the market come that day. So for Crypto Ewok, this has been Broke Boy Crypto. Next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m., we will see you then right here on the Creed of Crypto podcast.